Okay, we're going to cram about 2,000 years of history into the next few minutes. And it's all to answer what sounds like a simple question, but trust me, it's anything but. How did Germany, well, become Germany? Right? So where do you even start? Is there a birthday for Germany? A specific date? A big battle? Maybe a king who just declared it? That's the real mystery we're going to unpack here. And you'll see pretty quickly the answer isn't simple at all. For most of human history, you couldn't just point to Germany on a map. I mean, look at this. For more than 800 years, the borders of what was called the Holy Roman Empire were just constantly in flux. They were expanding, shrinking. It was less a country and way more of a moving target, a constantly changing idea. And that right there gets us to a really crucial point. The story of Germany doesn't kick off as a nation. It starts as an idea. And the craziest part? For centuries, it was an idea that was defined almost completely by people who weren't German. I mean, people have been living in this part of Europe for a staggering amount of time. We are talking deep, deep prehistory. Archaeologists have found some of humanity's oldest art right here. Take a look at this, the incredible Lion Man figurine. This thing was carved from mammoth ivory something like 41,000 years ago. Just wow. And it wasn't just sculpture either. Check this out. This is the Nebra sky disk. It's from the Bronze Age, and it's thought to be the oldest known concrete picture of the stars, of the cosmos. So it's super clear, right? There are these amazing, sophisticated cultures thriving here long before anyone even dreamed up the name Germany. So where did the name come from? Well, you can thank the Romans for that. It was actually Julius Caesar who first started using the term Germania. But here's the thing. It wasn't a name that people living there used for themselves at all. To Caesar, it was just a handy label for all that wild, untamed tribal land east of the Rhine River.
And the difference between the two sides? Oh, it was night and day. On one bank of the Rhine, you've got the super organized Roman world. We're talking cities, written laws, the whole legionary system. And on the other side, you had Germania, this loose collection of fiercely independent tribes, each one doing its own thing with its own leaders and customs.
And then everything changed. It all came down to one single battle in 9 AD. A bunch of Germanic tribes got together and ambushed 3 entire Roman legions in the Teutoburg forest. And I mean, they didn't just defeat them, they annihilated them. This was a catastrophic loss for Rome, and it stopped their expansion dead in its tracks. The Rhine became this permanent, hardened border between 2 totally different worlds. Okay, so fast forward a bit. After Rome's power eventually faded away, new players entered the game, and this is where we see the first real attempts to actually unite all these different Germanic-speaking peoples under one single banner. The first big swing at this came from the Franks. You've probably heard of their king, Charlemagne. This guy built a massive empire back in the 8th and 9th centuries. I mean, for the very first time, one single ruler was in charge of most of what we now call France, Germany, and Italy. It was a huge deal, bringing together all these separate Germanic groups. But, and this is going to be a theme, that unity didn't last long. As soon as Charlemagne was gone, his grandsons started fighting over who got what, and you guessed it, they split the whole empire apart. The key moment to remember is the Treaty of Verdun in 843. It's important because it created a kingdom called East Francia, which is basically the first rough draft of what would become Germany. Then, about a century later, in 962, a king named Otto I gets crowned emperor in Rome. This is the official beginning of a new political beast that's going to stick around for 1,000 years, the Holy Roman Empire. And their goal? Oh, it was incredibly ambitious. They wanted to be the true heirs to the ancient Roman Empire, but this time with its center of power right in the German heartland. So there you have it, an empire, a unified Germany, right? Well, not exactly. Not even close, really. The reality on the ground for the Holy Roman Empire was way, way messier than the name suggests. You know, the philosopher Voltaire had this famous joke about it. He said the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. And honestly, he kind of nailed it. It was really an empire in name only. See, there was no real central government calling the shots. Power was all spread out like a patchwork quilt across hundreds of different territories. You had dukes, princes, bishops, free cities, all with their own agendas. The emperor, a lot of the time, he was more of a figurehead than a guy with real power. And this long history of local control is a big reason why modern Germany is a federal system today. And this whole patchwork problem just got worse over time. First, you had these constant fights for power between the emperors and the popes. Then, boom, the 16th century hits, and Martin Luther kicks off the Protestant Reformation, which literally split the empire right down the middle, religiously speaking. And all that tension just exploded into the 30 Years' War, which was this absolutely brutal conflict that just shattered the empire and left it weaker than ever before. But sometimes out of total chaos, something new is born. A new idea of what Germany could be started to bubble up. The 19th century, that was the real turning point, the crucible, where the modern nation was finally forged. Not by some old-school emperor, but through, well, iron and will. And the path to get there was, you guessed it, chaotic. First, Napoleon comes marching across Europe and in 1806 just wipes the 800-year-old Holy Roman Empire off the map. Gone. Then, in 1848, people rise up in revolutions trying to build a unified, democratic Germany, and they fail. Finally, in 1871, one guy succeeds where everyone else failed. The Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. And he didn't do it with speeches and votes. He did it with clever politics and, well, war. So what was Bismarck's secret? How did he pull it off? Well, he had two huge things going for him. First, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing, and it made his state, Prussia, an economic juggernaut. And second, Prussia had built this incredibly efficient, modern, and frankly, scary military machine. You put those two things together, that was the engine that finally unified Germany. So the German nation is finally born, a real country on a map. But its journey, its search for what it really means to be Germany, was far from over. The 20th century was about to test this new nation in ways no one could imagine, breaking it apart and forcing it to completely reinvent itself. Again. In the 20th century was just a violent whirlwind. By 1900, Germany is the top dog in Europe. But that very power leads straight into devastating conflict, total defeat in World War I, and the incredibly unstable Weimar Republic. And that instability, it opened the door for the absolute horror of the Nazi regime, World War II, and the Holocaust. And after all that, after total defeat in 1945, the country itself was literally sawed in half, a capitalist West Germany and a communist East Germany. So for more than 40 years, you have two Germanys, a nation divided right on the front line of the Cold War. It seemed like that's just how it was going to be forever. And then, almost overnight, everything changed. The Berlin Wall comes down in '89, and by 1990, the two German states are officially one again. It was this incredible moment that completely reshaped the map of Europe. And that brings us, finally, to today. Because the reunified Germany that rose from the rubble of the 20th century has found a totally new identity. This time, right at the heart of a new kind of project. You could almost call it a new kind of empire, the European Union. Modern Germany is an absolute economic powerhouse. We're talking about a country that makes up about a quarter of the entire Eurozone's economy. That's huge. And because of that, as a key leader in the EU, Germany is now front and center in dealing with Europe's biggest challenges, whether it's a financial crisis or an issue of international security. So, think about this journey we've just taken. The search for Germany went from being just a Roman label for the other side of the river to a 1,000-year-long patchwork empire that wasn't really an empire, to a modern nation forged in war, shattered by unimaginable tragedy, and then, against all odds, reunited. It's been a heck of a ride, and it leaves us with one big final question. After all that, what's the next chapter in Germany's search for itself?